Okay, I'd like to call our Finance and Audit meeting for April 9th, 2026 to order at 8:30 a.m. We have all members present except for Larry and Eric. We have minutes for approval for the March 15th, 2026 meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve those. Terry, Don, any questions or concerns? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. Public comments?
We have none? Last call.
Doesn't look like. Okay. Member comments? None? Okay. Presentation, capital plan. Adam.
Well, good morning, and with apologies to 4 of you who have seen this before. Does anyone need a packet? Mike, I know this is, Carolyn, did you want one?
Yeah, I should have brought mine, but it's
all right.
It's big.
I haven't seen it before.
You haven't seen it before?
Yeah.
Brian, did you want another copy?
No.
Nope, you got it? All right, thank you. Well, good news, I printed less paper yesterday for this because I knew there were people that didn't want to just get going. This is a capital plan presentation for 2026 to 36. This is the third of 3, so hopefully I've got it down by now. I'd just like to say the PowerPoints that you have, feel free to write on those at all you want. That's the idea of printing them out for you, is that you can take notes or write down questions, and certainly ask any questions at any time. I also want to take a minute to thank Carrie Wise, our CFO, your CFO, and Tom Burrows, your facilities director, who both have seen this and have provided input and review to it. With that, we'll get started. What are we going to review today? First, we're going to talk about what is a capital plan. Then we're going to talk about what is included in a capital plan. We'll review the county facilities. We'll talk about some industry funding best practices. We'll compare McHenry County to those industry best practices. We'll talk about how projects are prioritized and selected at the county, and then we'll review the larger spreadsheet you have, which is a draft of 2026 to 2036 as we've populated it for the capital plan. So first off, what is a capital plan? It's generally a collection of capital projects, not the operations side. It includes buildings and mostly FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Generally, it will cost, the item or the project will cost over $100,000 and have a lifespan of 5 years or more before replacement. And then we have items included as capital that are dictated by external auditors or other best practices. So what is included in the county CIP? It's county facilities and their related components. The larger the building, several roofs, walls, and HVAC systems rise to a level of capital expenditure on their own outside of the building. Other equipment, emergency radios, body cameras, and jail management components. Certain technology purchases, servers and wireless infrastructure across larger buildings can rise to a level of capital improvement. We do not include at McHenry County as of now vehicles, trucks, DOT's equipment, or leased technology. Leases are dealt with elsewhere in the budget. Simple facilities overview. Most of you are familiar with the big government center across the street. It is the county's largest building. It was originally built in 1971. It's had several major renovations over time and is just over 205,000 square feet. Next largest building is the county jail. It was originally built in 1990. There was a renovation in 2006. It is 165,000 square feet. The administration building which you're in now, originally built in 2002, there was some renovation back in 2018, 71,400 square feet. 500 Russell, which includes the Workforce Network Board and ETSB currently, was built in 1996. There was a renovation done in 2016, and it totals about 10,000 square feet. 400 Russell, which was acquired just last year by the county. It was originally built in 1989. It has not been majorly renovated in any way since it was built, and it is about 7,600 square feet. Treasurer's Office, originally built in 1978, was renovated in 2009, 5,700 square feet. McHenry County Department of Transportation was built originally in 2000. It has not been majorly renovated since then. It houses the DOT and several of their other capital items. It is 45,600 square feet. Building A on the southeast corner of the Government Center property across the street, built in 1985. Major renovation in 2018. Coroner's portion of this building is being renovated as we speak, 2026, and it is about 25,000 square feet. Valley High Nursing Rehabilitation and Memory Care, built in 2004. There were additions in 2021 and 2024. It is about 72,500 square feet as it stands right now. Crystal Lake Public Health and Animal Control. I apologize for the 1994 image. There's a nice renovation that's being completed in 2026 on this project. It is just over 22,000 square feet. The Sheriff's Joint Training Facility, originally built in 1925, majorly renovated by Cary, the Village of Cary, in 1953 and 1999. The Sheriff renovated it for his training uses in 2023, and it is currently 21,000 square feet. The Joint Training Firearms Range, new construction built in 2024, 12,000 square feet. The McHenry County Mental Health Board in Crystal Lake was originally built 2004. A renovation was done in 2011. It's 36,000 square feet. Other minor facilities that the county has, some off-site election storage barns, the DOT cold storage and salt dome. The sheriff has an outdoor Heartland gun range. We have Valley High well houses, pump houses. There's a shed on Ware Road, and presently shown on that screen for you is the Sheriff's Marine Unit Office, which was installed in 2023. All of this is just to present to you that the county really has a total of 747,301 square feet of office space, as it were, on 174 acres across McHenry County. The average age of the facilities as they were built dates to about 1996, or let's just say those buildings are all on average 30 years old now. The average age of the most recent renovations is 2017, or 9 years old, and that does include the 2026 renovations mentioned earlier. So that's really a view of facilities. What do all these facilities have in common? All major facilities have capital needs. They have parking lots, they have pavement, roofs, mechanical units, utility systems, HVAC, etc., that rise to the level of capital needs on their own. There's operating needs. Every major facility comes with electrical, natural gas, telecommunications, refuse pickup. There may be vehicles used to serve each facility, and then there's also landscaping and snow removal. Some departments have different staffing needs than their own department. For example, IT personnel, dedicated IT personnel, are housed in an office at DOT and other buildings across the county. And then generally speaking, the costs, the operating costs, the larger and or less energy efficient the building, the higher the operating costs. So what don't all these facilities have in common? There are specific sites that have fuel islands, brine tanks, salt dome, or wells. Others do not. The county server replacements. The server has its own room at the government center. Those are hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of servers that the county maintains. Those rise to a level of capital funding on their own. The sheriff, DOT, and EMA emergency radios. The radios are a capital project. The sheriff's body cameras. Jail-specific capital items, jail management hardware and elevators. Those are capital projects unto themselves. And then the coroner's industrial refrigerators and freezer could be an example of another capital item housed within a building. So in the time I've been here, and I only use 2018 to reference because that's when I started with the county, so I only wanted to really speak about things I've know or seen in my time. We started at 686,000 square feet in 2018. Since then, we've added 61,200 square feet. That's about 9% of our total space has been added in the last 8 years. And in that time, to show some efficiencies, the facilities department has actually decreased their staffing by 2. So how did we add 9% total square feet and still reduce headcount? The county uses a lot of building automation. For example, this room, you have air handlers and you have all the lights that are on sensors, and they will turn off and not be operating unless the room is occupied or identified as occupied. We use contracted services where appropriate. Landscaping is a prime example of that, where we're not paying our own people to do landscaping maintenance around the buildings. Efficient scheduling software. The facilities department utilizes a software program that schedules for them building maintenance issues, testing of automation systems, checking of other systems. It gives them a schedule and allows them to schedule and prioritize what they need to do that day. And then responsible project prioritization. All capital projects, facility related at least, run through the facilities department as they're aggregated, and then facilities determines with administration and some others what is considered a need versus a want. And that's what we've been doing since I've been here, is just evaluating those, and then only the needs are brought forward in the capital plan. So a funding overview. How would you fund a capital plan? In general, there are two industry averages that we've looked at, the International Facility Management Association and the Building Owners and Managers Association. We know there are others out there. We've seen generally specific, and it can vary here and there, but generally they recommend investing 2 to 4% of your current replacement value as determined by your insurance carrier. To keep a building in good condition, they generally say 2 to 3% of your CRV is needed. This funding provides day-to-day upkeep and ensures systems remain operational and prevents premature failure of systems. Fair average condition, 1 to 2% annually, may keep facilities in fair condition, but this also may create a growing backlog of capital projects it needs. Last but not least, less than 1% is typically what they say leads to exponential degradation and is only recommended as a last resort for facilities that you are planning to take offline or decommission in the near future. So McHenry County compared to industry standards. Across the top of this spreadsheet, I apologize on the printout, it's a little tough to read, but I can certainly verify any of these numbers for you as needed. Oh, there it is. Up across the top, you'll see some dates, 2018, 2020, 22, 23, 24, 26. Those were dates where our insurance carrier did give us updated valuations for all of our properties. What we've done underneath that is put McHenry County's CIP funding for the year and then compared that to the industry standards as a percentage of CRV. What you see on the chart, the brighter green line, that bounces around is McHenry County's funding. What you see at the low end is 1%, middle is 2%, 2.5%, and then 3%. And this just shows how McHenry County is funded compared to these industry standards. What we see is that we're a little bit under, generally speaking. What we have done in the past, I want to say those first 3 years were in a different accounting system before we had D365. Those numbers had to be extrapolated, so they're not perfect. But we can't verify them one way or the other for you. And then beyond that, these are numbers that we're able to pull out of a direct general fund transfer to Fund 400, which is the capital plan. And we have those either in D365 or as set going forward. Really 2026 is the number we have. The remaining numbers come from what we're planned in the budget going forward. In a long-term outlook, excuse me. So how is a capital plan funded? So to be completely transparent, general fund is the primary source, but McHenry County does everything we can to find other sources of funding for any capital projects. We have used ARPA funds in the past. Grants are used whenever available, and we can apply for them and receive them. We hold off some projects, specifically tie them to grants, and if a grant is not received, that project is not funded and is removed from the capital plan. There are some department-specific funds. The sheriff has their own funds. Clerk and treasurer have automation funds. RTA funds can be used for capital projects, and then to a lesser extent as applied CDBG. This isn't meant to be a comprehensive list. This is just meant to show you there are several examples, and we do have several different avenues to fund the capital plan, depending on where the need lies and what's available. So how are projects prioritized? The county prioritizes life safety as number one, generally speaking. If it's a life safety issue as we see it, or it's a serious risk management issue, that will be a high priority in the capital plan. Next is return on investment. If the project offers grants or some other return on investment that we can't necessarily budget for, but we know of, that will be a prioritized project because it minimizes costs to the capital plan. If it's end of life, the emergency radios are an example of that. It's a fresh discussion for the county board. When Motorola walks in and says we're not supporting those radios anymore, kind of puts us in a bind. That gets prioritized in the capital plan. And then the cost of any repairs or any rising repair costs over time. If the cost of a repair is substantially significant, we will look at replacing the unit. Or if there's rising repair costs over time, those units will be prioritized higher for replacement. And then, of course, a review by the facilities team. As I said before, they will qualify what is a want versus a need. And last but certainly not least, we desire the board's input. That's where the spreadsheet comes in, and that's where we're moving to next. The large spreadsheet you have in front of you, or you've received already, I apologize for the repeated presentation, but this is a list of capital projects as we've identified them. I apologize for the ugliness of this spreadsheet. This spreadsheet was put into Excel. It was pulled out of Questica because we're changing to a new software system. So all the projects were pulled out of Questica, thrown on a spreadsheet, and waiting to go into the new system. Anything you see highlighted in yellow, I will say that is just for me. That is a project that was identified in the past year, not put into Questica. It does not have a project number in our current CIP, but we need to make sure it's included going forward. I'd like to identify for you on page 3, that's what you need to, I'm sorry, Eric. You're good. Certainly. That's the presentation. There's the spreadsheet for you. You'll see on page 3 a green highlighted number towards the middle of the page. That is the CIP balance. That is a flexible number. That number goes up or down based on closing out a fiscal year, which we're doing now with 2025, or it can go up. For example, we're waiting to receive a federal grant for the rooftop air units we replaced last year. That would return to the capital plan and raise that. So it's a fluid number, but it gives us a general idea of where we're starting. From there, we've included the 2026 transfer from the general fund as an example, and then the same number for 2027. I'd highlight to you 2 projects that are in gray. Just above that, the emergency radios you'll see that is highlighted in gray, and then on page 1, there is a facility improvement at the government center. Those are the only 2 projects that we have begun to move forward on with replacement. Everything else has not been, no progress has been made on any other 2026 projects as to date. So it puts us where we are. You'll see in there we've added several projects for the DOT, the Department of Transportation. There was a question, John, you had the question of outlay versus maintenance, and that was a fair question yesterday. Not much outlay on this sheet. We built out to 2031, which is really where facilities has everything built out to more completely. 2032 and 2033, we don't have much, but we're working on building those. 2034, you'd see that there's a radio replacement. We talk about the radios every 8 years. We've added a cost of inflation to that in the future to represent that to you, that we've got a forward-looking plan here. What happens is that number will come forward as the years come forward, and the idea is this sheet can help start the conversation. The board can see something where they say, oh shoot, we've got a $5 million not coming up in 2 years. How are we going to fund this, or what are we going to do about that? That number can be moved forward if it's a priority. That number can be moved back if Motorola has 9 years from now has said, there's no need, we're still supporting your radios, everything's fine. We'll push that out to 10 years, and we'll continue to push it out until that time comes. What this does is just kind of give you an overview of what we've got for the capital plan right now. There are no major renovations in here. I've said that before, I should qualify that. We do have one identified for the sheriff's office, but as I mentioned before, that's based on a $1.2 million grant that they are scheduled to receive but have not yet. That project will not move forward without that grant being applied to the county. Other than that, there are no major renovations, there are no new buildings contemplated. This is primarily all maintenance except for a request from the county clerk for some additional technology in 2028. And the DOT projects which have been added that are more capital intensive, building related, that have not been identified before. The rest is maintenance of what we have. Yes,
So
please.
for example, the mental health building,
Yeah,
that's owned by them, maintained by them. If they decide to do anything with it, that's theirs. It's
That's
not
theirs.
It's not our asset.
correct.
Okay.
It is, yes, and you'll see there's no funding identified for them. The county has spent money on that building in the past, so it is included in the capital project, but it's a blank line.
If they were to decide to sell it as an asset, would all of that money go to them, or would they have anything that would come back to us because of investments that we've made previously?
Fair question.
Don't
I don't know. I apologize, I do not
understand
know.
that.
Good question. That building was here before my time, and I don't know
Okay.
any agreements that might have been there as to how that might
Okay.
sail out.
I didn't know if it's in our balance sheet as an asset or not.
It would go back to them.
What?
It would go back to
Okay.
their fund.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you. Fair question. With that, it's really just, we've been spending about $3.42 million a year on average since 2018 to 2025. We have budgeted from 2026 to 2031, the average is $4 million of replacement. Some years are higher, some years are lower, but that's the idea of showing you that the capital plan really ebbs and flows. And one of the ways we'd say is the best way to manage a capital plan is to be able to have and maintain some kind of balance in a plan like this. So when the radios or something major happens that we weren't expecting, we are able to fund it without having to scramble or use reserves in some way. So that's really my presentation. I'll take any questions you might have. Thank you for your time. Really just an idea to show you the capital plan as we have it currently. Yes, Mike?
So, do we have, let me rephrase that. We should have a dedicated revenue stream to support the capital plan. It used to be 4 million or whatever, 3.3, 3.4, whatever it was. I know that because it's coming out of the general fund, that is not really dedicated in the sense of, because it competes with other priorities every single year. But the problem with that competing with other priorities is it's much easier to take than to give. So I'm trying to figure out how we differentiate the need versus an assurance to the department that we are dedicated in keeping our facilities at proper working levels.
I'd say that's been a bit of a challenge for us to do. Yes, there was the debt service that came off the books. That money has been applied to the capital plan. I wouldn't say it's been lost or taken somewhere else. It was about $1.8 million a year, if I'm remembering correctly. And we have been spending, generally speaking, more than that, about twice that. So it's not that that was lost. It's that it's been used and more has been applied to the capital plan since that started, and I forget exactly when that started.
Well, I thought it was more than 1.8, but regardless, I mean, the concept is still the issue, I guess. Regardless of what the amount is, it's still the principle that we have needs every single year. We will continue to have needs, and as the buildings continue to age, those needs will continue to either go up or at minimum be constant plus inflation.
Yes.
So
correct.
well, so I'm trying to figure out for sustainability of a program that you got going out for 8 years. You know, how does the county board? What mechanisms can we put in place so that the county board is dedicated to doing that versus other stuff?
My preference would be to have Fund 400 identified as a capital fund. What or how that specifically is funded, that's where the capital funds come from now, however they're funded. you have a capital fund. I guess maybe I'm not sure entirely what you're asking.
I'm trying to figure out how does the county board dedicate a revenue stream to Fund 400 so that the needs of the county are met year over year versus, I don't want to say arbitrary, but versus the every year it competes with everything else that goes on out of the general fund, in the sense that you as someone who's presenting the information doesn't have any assurance by the county board that we are in fact going to fund what you are anticipating putting out there. And you've already said that you do this based on need, not want. So there's already a justification for what's being presented because it's already been vetted to make sure that it truly is needed versus wanted. You know, when we looked at all the glazing stuff we did on the center across the street, you know, did we have to do that? No, but we also know that water was infiltrating the building, going to be causing more damage and causing more problems. And so, you know, it's a stupid idea to think that we shouldn't have done it, you know? So it becomes a problem when county board members in the future start looking at the list that you're giving us on a spreadsheet or otherwise and come back and say, well, we don't have the money to do whatever the project is because we have other priorities that we want, whatever that is. And that leaves facilities with going, well, what am I supposed to do here? I'm trying to put a Band-Aid on a dike that's ready to burst. It's not that bad now, but it will get that way very quickly.
Sure.
If I can respond to the question, and it's a very fair question, it's a very sobering question. As we enter into the 2027 budget, it's a question that you as a county board will need to contemplate because this need is going to be there and it's going to, in essence, compete with all the other needs that you have coming before you. And so the county board needs to identify how this need, which our intent is to present to you what that need looks like, how you're going to fulfill that need in addition to everything else. I don't have that answer. We don't have a money tree I could say certainly for capital. We all know. But what we're trying to do is give you that early awareness of what you have on the horizon, not only for 2027, but for years on out. So as a county board, you can keep that in as part of the equation when you look at the amount of revenues that we're going to have available to fund fiscal years moving forward versus some of the growing needs of the county. So that's, you know, not really an answer for you, except it is going to be it's a policy question for the county board for this coming budget and future budgets.
Okay. Brian?
Thank you, Chair. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I'm going to come back to that in a diatribe, for which I apologize to those who have already heard this, but I think it's really an important point. But first, a question back to the graph of industry standards that you provided before. I want to just understand that particular graph.
Yeah.
You say that's industry standards, and that's as determined by what entity?
Forgive me, I don't have them off the top of my head. The previous slide. That 2 to 4%, as we presented on that chart, comes from the International Facility Management Association and the Building Owners and Managers Association. The IFMA is an internationally recognized across the board. They're industrial building managers, and the Building Owners and Managers is the same thing. They own commercial and industrial buildings across the country. This is their organization that says 2 to 4% is.
Okay, back to the other slide then, please. So the top three there, we've got 2, 2.5, and 3% standards recognized. I find it interesting. That's just a recommendation from these collective entities, correct?
Yes.
All right, so they follow the same course, if you will, in terms of all these years. They've kind of identified what the standards should be in each of those years. So I understand how they are coordinated and very typical in terms of the shape of the graph, if you will. And we are significantly diverse from those particular approaches. we have a high and we have a low. Identify what the highs were, please, for us. One,
the high year 2020, that goes back to the older accounting system that we had. Those first 3 years, that high of 6.2 million, one of the previous radio purchases. That's where it is recorded in the budget. That may have been in 2019. It could go to 2019. The idea is those first three numbers could come a little bit closer together on the graph, but wouldn't necessarily change what's represented. The second, 2025, 6.24 million, that was last year where we were buying 400 Russell. We also did this parking lot project. Those were the major projects for that year. There was also some additional funding from grants or certain ARPA funds. I believe the Crystal Lake facility, for example, was paid out of that. That's what rises those two peaks to those levels.
and did the radios come out of that?
The radios came out of the 6.234 million about 8 years ago in the 2020 listing. Like I said, there was a question of the payment versus the purchase of the radios, the acquisition of the radios versus the payment. So the radios may be acquired 2018, 2019. The payment applied to a Fund 100 account 6. You don't need the details. That's where it shows up in the financial system.
I'm just trying to tease out some things that I heard at the last presentation and make sure that we have the same thing.
Absolutely, please.
So the graph kind of levels out to 0, as it were, in the next 3 years, I think, 27,
Correct.
28, 29. You want to comment on that?
The county board, we have not identified there being any capital funds available for those 3 years, such as we budget or think about them today.
Thank you. And we have through the years 2018, 2025, anywhere from 3.3 to 3.4 capital plan. You've mentioned that the average was 3.42 million spent in capital plan. Can you tell us what that represents in terms of percentage for us?
Just over, compared to the chart, just over 1%.
Right.
At the current valuation from the insurer of $325 million, I'm rounding up by maybe $4,000, but $325 million of infrastructure. 1% would be 3.25%. I'm sorry, 3.25 million at 1%. So we're at 3.42 million, we're a little over 1% on average.
All right, so now to the diatribe. I think that it is very, very important for us to understand and for all units of local government to understand that just as we have a significant responsibility to protect and to maintain a reserve fund, and I think we all embrace that, we understand the need for a reserve fund, but I think that we equally need to make sure that we affect and preserve Fund 400, the capital fund, for us to, as an investment. You know, there are lots of things that we don't like to do. We don't like to pay insurance, we don't like to pay taxes, we don't necessarily like to put funds aside for the future, but the reality is we all understand that that's good practice, that's best practice actually. And so it's incumbent upon us to not only recognize the need, but to truly budget for the capital fund needs at a particular level. And I think the county board needs to decide what level do we want that. Do we want to maintain that kind of 1% where it's fair, if you will, on the guidelines, or slightly below, or do we want to move that up to, you know, a level of 2.5%? Because as we look at the information that you provided in the previous graph or previous chart, I think that the industry standards were saying that 2 is kind of across the board of those degrees of acceptance level, if you will. And so maybe it should be 2 or 2.5 or 3%, but the county board needs to decide that. And then we need to get to Mike's point, and we need to understand that it's got to be a kind of a concrete decision that we make every year. We can't give up that money that we're putting in the Fund 400 for capital projects to be able to take care of other things, or to reduce taxes, if you will, or to do whatever. We have to make sure that we are being good stewards of the facilities that we have, and maintain those facilities and invest in that capital fund. It's also for, you know, transportation and other things. So we need to kind of keep all of that in mind. The other thing is that we have chosen, as an accounting system here, we have chosen to remove equipment from capital fund per se.
Certain equipment.
And so we have a separate equipment fund. And we know that there's going to be ongoing and ever increasing costs associated with that relative to new technology in terms of the cameras, best cameras, and in terms of the radios and those systems, and even the infrastructure system here within the servers and all those types of things. That is going to continue to increase. So I think we have to identify that it's not only important to put money into the capital fund on I'm going to call this a set aside, a reserve basis, but we need to do that for equipment as well. So whatever that level is, I think maybe that's, I don't know, 2% of it, 2%, if you will, or whatever we decide that might be. But we've got to put that in, and we've got to make sure that we are dedicated to doing that as good stewards, not just for today, but well into the future. So the question is, how do we do that? I'm concerned when we take RTA funds and we put those into vehicles. I'm concerned when we take RTA funds and put those into radio equipment. I understand that there's a share of that from transportation that could be put into that, but I'm concerned when we take quote-unquote money from RTA funds, because those RTA funds, in my mind, need to be dedicated to transportation needs. So that's kind of my long-term concerns. But I agree with the chair. We have to make sure that on an annual basis, we are dedicated to being good stewards, to oversighting funds in capital fund projects, in equipment fund projects, adding to that on an annual basis so that we can maintain a solid and stable financial position as we move into the future. Thank you for your indulgence. I apologize.
I know we're going to talk about the budget policy in a minute. Doesn't the budget policy call for like $1.5 million to be transferred to Fund 400 every year?
No, the language in the budget policy is in regards to Division of Transportation. Capital.
Oh, okay.
And just, if I can just speak to just clarify a few things. I think your point when you said an afterthought, I think has been accurate in the earlier years of this chart. So the debt came off in fiscal 22, but I know in 21, 22, that was just really what was left over when we finished the budget. So when you talk about, are we going to dedicate money to the capital plan right out of the gate, then that obviously has an effect of the total expenses of the general fund. So, but then in 23, 24, and 25, those were tied to a specific list. So I think we're trying to get more purposeful, I guess, with funding the capital plan. The challenge right now with Fund 400 is we didn't account for the amount that came out for the radios, so that really wiped out the balance of the capital fund, because it's kind of the idea, you know, as Adam's talking about all this square footage we're having to maintain, is having something in the capital fund so when something comes up, right, like this roof is leaking all of a sudden and we didn't know, or whatever. So there's a couple different challenges with that, and then in 26, 27, 20, or 26 and 27, we set aside money from the jail revenue. So that's where the funding for that is, and that contract ends in 27, and that's why it ends. Because come 28, there'll have to be decisions made about how much are we going to set aside when the projections already show that we can't meet just the regular operating expenses. Does that help?
So,
Well, yeah, I mean, it helps in the sense that it's a crystal ball that's pretty damn crystal clear. So, I mean, I don't know how you That's the point. The point is that we have expenses that are going to be challenged just to keep place operating, forget maintained.
Yes.
And that's, you know. So my point is not that we should have a dedicated amount going to this every year, but if we don't have a dedicated amount, it's much easier for future boards to push it to the side because operating expenses would quote unquote take precedence over capital projects.
Right, so I guess the dedicated amount would be whatever needs are identified, and we fund that. We add that in right from the beginning. But
Which is
again, it's relatively easy to take out.
Well, and that's the problem.
You're just looking at 1 year.
Right, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
But couldn't part of the budget policy be the set amount every year goes to Fund 400 on top of whatever capital projects are approved?
Well, but what Carrie's trying to say is that amount would be fluctuating every single year based on the projects.
Well, I'm saying an amount on top of whatever projects are approved. So you would still go through the process of approving projects, but you would say every year $1 million is going to go to the capital. When we do the budget process, part of the policy is $1 million gets dedicated to that fund on top of whatever we approve spending wise. You start building that fund up.
I don't know how that's possible in the sense that we can't even meet operating expenses. How in the hell are we going to put another $1 million aside?
I'm just throwing a number out there.
Well, no,
But what I'm saying is, okay, we have priorities we have to make. We've made decisions along the way.
Yeah.
We're at an inflection point. We have to make those types of decisions. That's where we're at. So we're either gonna try and fund it every year as we're doing now on the fly, and hope that we have the money there, or we have to start building some type of fund balance in this thing. So we get, when the roof starts to leak at the last minute, we have money to spend there. Because right now we don't. It's gonna come at the sacrifice of some other plan that's gonna get pushed off, and every time we push something off a year, that dollar is now $1.03 or $1.04, whatever inflation is.
And then yesterday, the discussion was putting the cart before the horse with over 742,000 square feet of space on 33 acres, looking at what is, how much do we need in this county as far as square footage? Is all of this necessary? Are we utilizing all of this to our best advantage? And so looking at that, and then looking at our capital plan on what we need, and then of course, the budget for it. But that's a lot of square footage that we have here, and why all of this? So that's something that has to absolutely be considered.
Well, I think we have a space study going on, so that should answer that.
Well, I'm thankful for this capital plan so that people can actually see all of the buildings, all of the square footage, all of the acreage. So that's great.
We do have a space needs study from last year that was really focused on the government center only, not any other buildings. And it did show us that there's probably that the state's attorney has some space needs. We were looking at like the circuit clerk and the sheriff, how there may be some space there to efficiently reallocate real estate we have.
Yeah.
To better serve.
And I don't mean to go into that now.
Correct.
I'm just saying that something that
Yeah, it's fair, and I would also just say, I would also just say that would identify a major renovation to the government center. This plan, because of funding constraints going for the next 5 years, does not contemplate major renovations or those types of activities.
My last comment. I know yesterday we talked about the space study, and I made the comment that we pushed off the more comprehensive one last year. And there was some comments made that, space studies always come back and say you need more space. But depending how we establish those, no, it was said yesterday.
I said that.
Yeah. We can,
in certain areas, we may have space where we don't need it, spaces.
my point is that without a comprehensive study the space that we have, with the parameter that we're not looking to add space, we're looking to better utilize that space and have the project focused on that, we'd have a better idea of what we need and what we have, where that can be used better. We bought a building last year, someone's moving out of that building, one of the leasees, how does that benefit us? What does that do for us? You know, there was talk about throwing some walls, I'm using the word throwing up walls, and I apologize for that. But what's that really needed? So having something comprehensive that says, here's everything, and here's how you can reallocate that space, would seem to me to make a lot of sense. Because even as we look through this, there's needs on here that can't be pushed off. So you're gonna have to spend money on spaces or buildings that you may determine down the road you don't need, but those needs are existing today.
Yeah, but even if you determine you don't need them in the future, you still gotta sell the asset, so.
Right, no, that's what I'm saying. You know, we wanna look at our space needs, but until we look at our space needs, we're just throwing money after this stuff.
All right, anyone else have questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to future presentations.
Will do.
Well done, thank you so much.
Okay, we're on to routine consent agenda. I was asked to pull 7.2 and 7.3. Are there other items that members would like to pull? Yes, Terry?
7.6, 7.7, 7.8, 7.21.
7.6, 7.7, 7.8. And what was the last one?
21.
21. Okay.
I
Yes,
hope I can remember all the reasons.
Brian?
I don't really want to pull anything, I'd just like to make a comment before we start discussion on these.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think for 7,
Do you want to do 7.5?
I
Sure, we'll do 7.5.
and my question on that was, I didn't actually see a budget policy attached.
It was emailed to you.
Gotcha.
Okay, so then I have, the items that I have removed are 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 21. Anything else?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 21. Okay, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to approve items 1, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, and 24. John makes a motion, Brian seconds that motion. We'll go to vote. Brian?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, motion carries. We are on to item 7.2. I'll entertain a motion for that. John moves, Carolyn seconds.
I asked him to do it. Okay.
Remember, Althoff asked that I told this so she could.
Did you want to make a comment? I heard you say that
Oh, I'm
before I
sorry.
go.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to make a general comment. We have several, this one included with regards to grants for the county. And I do think it's appropriate for us to understand, as was indicated earlier, that we rely heavily upon grants for our programming, for our budgets. And I want to commend staff. I think staff overall has done a remarkable job, not just in securing grants, but also oversighting grants, because that is the huge kind of background work that has to be done, is to oversight and report on the grants that are received, because that's what proper reporting and success in projects that are maintained and oversighted then is what allows us to be in a good position for future grants. So I just want to say thank you. I think everybody's done a remarkable job, and it's really important for us to recognize how significant that is to our budget and to our financial efforts. So congratulations, thank you very much, and keep up the fine work. Thank you, that's all I want to say.
Okay, so thank you very much. I specifically asked that this item be removed. As the chair of the Senior Services Commission, I think it's important that I be here if you have any questions with regard to this, but I did kind of want to take a moment to explain exactly what happened. I have with me the wonderful staff that is responsible for actually administering this program, Sarah Ponens, Maria Avila. So what happened is...
And who are you? Sorry.
Oh, Pam Altoff, sorry. I just assumed. And it's nice to see Ms. Greeno and Mr.
Well, we
Collins
have people
again for the
watching at
second morning in
home.
a row.
We have people watching at home that might
I
not
forgot.
know who you are.
That's true, that's very true. And I remind all of you before I get into this tomorrow, 9 a.m., public health ribbon cutting, Route 14, show up. So what happened with the senior services is about 20 months ago, Treasurer Kurtz came and said, you have excess funds sitting in an account we should be investing. So we did, followed her advice. We received some additional funds which were available to us just recently, and our policy is to go back and look at all of the grants that we were awarded, ensure that those individuals are actually submitting their reimbursement requests on time. Staff has also taken to visiting at least 4, if not 5 of these agencies annually to make sure that they are operating appropriately. And we went back and looked, and then via the percentages of the amount of money they originally received, we then allocated the additional interest. Woodstock Food Pantry is a little bit different, so I want to explain that to you. They had come forward originally, and the commission members felt that they did not have enough pertinent data to award any funds to this particular applicant. After that, the Woodstock Food Pantry went back and provided us much more specific information, so we reconsidered their request. They lost their space, so they were unable to accumulate any type of quantity of food, which most food pantries do because they have storage, they have freezers, they have shelves. Woodstock lost all of that. They're in the process of a major capital campaign to purchase a building. They're more than 80% of the way there. These funds are basically a one-time assistance so they can continue to purchase food. And they run driver's license, they check IDs, they look at ages. We know that these funds will be used for seniors as are defined by our policy, which are individuals from Woodstock and Wonder Lake over the age of 60. So we're real happy with what we've done policy-wise with the program. We really think that we've gone to kind of the next level. I want to share that with you so you can share that with your constituents. This was a referendum 22 years ago. We're doing really well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, as will the ladies over here.
Anyone?
Sweet, thank you.
All right.
Really appreciate that. Okay, thanks.
We'll go to vote on item 7.2. John?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion carries. 7.3 was tabled at PED, so it'll come through next month, so I'll make a motion to table item 7.3 until next month's finance meeting.
I'll second.
Not a motion to table, but a motion to
I did. Table.
postpone.
Postpone?
The date certain.
Motion to postpone the case, please.
Sure. You want to make that motion?
Sure. Motion to postpone to date certain, which will be next month's meeting.
Okay. Any questions about item 7.3? You were seconding that motion?
I'll second. I was
Okay.
there, so I think
Yeah.
that's appropriate. They had two schedules that they were looking at in terms of where to take the fees. And rather than picking one schedule over another, there was going to be some crossover
Okay.
and some additional looking at this.
Sounds good. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We're on to item 7.5. I'll entertain a motion to approve. John makes the motion. I'll second the motion. Carrie? Wasn't a lot of changes.
No, there was not. Thank you.
Okay.
Do you want me to share my screen, or you guys all have it?
Eric, were you
If
able
you
to
could
pull
share
up
the
the
screen, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't have to show the screen.
So really, I'll just touch on the two key changes. The rest was just cleaning up a few issues like changing the ordinance, the purchasing ordinance, like minor stuff like that. So the scenarios, to be honest, I wasn't sure how to start with the scenarios. So we put a couple on, and then we thought you guys could just tell us what you wanted to see. Based on all the discussions we've had last summer, the budget discussions, based on the discussion we just had about capital, in my view, the way we have the approved expenses right now, there hasn't been enough expenses to cut identified to talk about not taking really the most. The CPI is 2.7 plus the growth. So that's why I have only these two, but you can add however you want.
Well, I don't know how you go do something different than what you got, so. I'm fine with them.
Okay.
But that's a big sigh.
Well, I think the elephant in the room is twofold. There are those who believe that we should be cutting, and there are those who believe that we need to, once again, look at a look back. So I think those are the unspoken things that hasn't been addressed, and if we don't say that's something we want to look at, then staff is not going to proceed with any of those types of things, and then later on, we can't ask them to do that because now is the time to raise that. So I think we need to hash that out a little bit.
So adding a look back option, is that what you're, just to be clear what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying add a look back option, and then there are those who think we should be reducing it or staying absolutely status quo. So now's the time, in my mind, now's the time, because if it's not in this policy that we adopt, then we can't come back and say, well, we're going to look at this too. So that's my point.
My viewpoint is on both of those, the look back failed last fall. And I'm not willing to go through that again, in the sense that if the board, who is the current board, it's not like we changed boards, so the same people is sitting in the same seats. If it fails once, I don't know why you try and do it again. And quite honestly, the differential between taking full CPI and new growth and doing the look back now, that difference is very small. And so, if the will of the board last year was to not do it, why would the will of the board change even when the differential is even smaller than it was and the impact will be even less? So I'm not willing to put staff through going through that exercise when obviously the board has already spoken about that.
Fair enough. I think it failed by what, one vote?
3.
Which time?
3 votes?
I mean, I guess it
How
does
many
depend on what
hours?
time, but
Yeah,
3
how many
votes is
hours?
it was pretty consistently 7 votes.
And that's fine. I think those are fair points. I'm not trying to argue for that. My point is, if there are other options, now's the time.
Well, there are lots of other options. There's 0-0, there's cuts.
That's what I'm saying.
We could be quite divisive about our budget process, but why? Why not start with something that we think we could work with? And many of us have been looking at realistic economies over the year that we can propose now. And I know that departments have been looking at economies over this year, so that we can really have a very constructive budget discussion. And again, as Mike said, we're starting from a better position because of the work that's been done this year. We haven't been, going into these meetings and just saying yes to everything. We've been having uncomfortable conversations.
I'm sorry. I'd personally like to see no CPI plus new growth as one of the options, just because, part of it is we rely on staff to come up with recommendations, and, right down there it says, county administration shall detail expenditures that will not be appropriated. I'd at least like to see the option. So if there's a second, I'd like to make that motion to add that one in.
So it would be 0% CPI plus new growth.
I would second that. It would be an exercise.
Right, it just gives us more information.
Okay. I don't need to make a motion. We can just ask staff to add it in if that's what we want to do. But how does the other people feel about that? As adding that as a third scenario?
I don't think it's workable, personally, with the demands we have and based upon the previous discussion with regards to capital funds.
Well, I think it's just a scenario.
Correct.
And, you're gonna go on past years, it'll be a spreadsheet that shows, here's what the budget looks like, scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3. And,
Right.
that will then give us starting points to look at how short we are and what has to happen.
And if it's, exactly, and if it's not workable, then we'll see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if it shows, whatever the scenario shows the shortfall is, like, what the difference is, what you can or can't do, so.
I don't have a problem with it, and the reason why I don't have a problem with it is because we're already going to have to cut millions of dollars out of the budget just to make operating expenses. So when you're dealing with what you're gonna cut in order to make a balanced budget next year, looking at an additional amount of cuts is just that, looking at additional amount of cuts. I mean, it's not, if we have to, my guess is that we're gonna have to cut $3.5 to $4 million to make out of operating next year just to make an even budget, right? So if you're cutting, let's just say $3.5 to $4 million, and you take CPI out, which will be 2.83, roughly, I'm guessing. Huh?
That sounds about right.
So if you want to take that, then you say, okay, well, instead of 3.5, I got to do 6.5. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So all that is more painful cuts to something somewheres and what that looks like. So to me, having that as a scenario is it just makes the list of what we're cutting and where we're cutting longer. And that's all it's really doing. Am I speaking incorrectly, or is that?
You're speaking very correctly.
I guess my comment on that is, we can say that we're going to cut and we offer cuts, but there's not consensus on those cuts.
Yep.
Then we never actually make the cuts and we keep saying we have to make cuts. And really 27 is the year that we start to see the fund balance going below 5 months. And so, again, I try to come up with some recommendations of cuts that I think the majority would agree upon, but so far, that has been difficult. So again, like, providing cuts is fine, but at some point there has to be a decision made on more revenue or do the actual cuts.
And I'll add, that decision needs to come from the county board. These are your services, and you're the ones that need to determine which cuts are going to be made as opposed to putting it on the staff. I mean, we're always going to push against that because ultimately you're the county board. you're the policymakers. You have to determine what services will continue, what services will be dialed back.
Well, you offered, just to make sure we're on the same page, you offered cuts last year, or suggested cuts last year for each budget.
There were, but there was also too, based on discussions and suggestions that were provided by the county board members. That was the first outreach is you tell us, and then we put those on the list.
Understood.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure
Right.
it'll be something similar as what you're suggesting.
Well, it comes from the county board.
Correct. But it'll be presented once it comes from the county
As it's
board.
compiled from the county board members.
Okay.
Terry?
So cuts, the word cuts hurt and they're unpopular. And I couldn't get this board to cut $14,000 of barbell money for a volunteer board. I mean, I'm just saying, they don't even want to do that because that money came from someplace else, you know, that could have alleviated pressure on a levy. I know, and that was only 14,000. Try cutting 3.5 million, 5 million. Yes, it's going to make people sad, mad, unpopular. And so it's our job, that's what leadership does for the good of the whole. And there could be programs, services that maybe aren't giving a return. Maybe we're great initially. Maybe they've achieved their goals and are just there because people like each other and they like serving in those areas, but they aren't really serving a purpose anymore. And so those are the types of things that we have to objectively look at. You know, it's going to be very difficult. But this is the time, and we're asking you, we're telling you, we're directing you to give us these budgets so that we can look at them. And as we hash through it, and then we make the decision that, yeah, no, we're going to either say that these things are cut or that our taxpayers, our constituents, are going to have to continue to take the load on their backs of the 6.7% portion of their property tax bill from McHenry County to keep Illinois the #1 property tax state in the nation. And that's just the way it is, so that your property tax bill is higher than it cost you to pay for that house that you had, and now you're retired and trying to still live here. So that's just one of the difficulties of taking this position that we all ran for of our own free will. So yes, we're asking you for these scenarios. And so please give us that opportunity to look through them and discuss them, and we will take that. We will take that challenge, and then we'll decide. And that's what we signed up for.
And that's fair.
And that's what people voted for when they voted for us.
Right.
And if they don't like that, they won't be voting for us in November.
As far as the scenarios go, that's easy to put together. That's a mathematical calculation. We can calculate what the property tax yield will be based on the different scenarios. We have other revenues that will project as they change year to year. And then we have what the operating expenses are, and really what each scenario will create, you know, that difference between what the projected revenues are and then what the expenditures are as everything stays equal. And then if there's a delta between revenues and expenditures, that's really where it comes down to the county board to say, all right, how do we close that gap? So that's what we're going to present to you, is if there is a gap, what that gap is, and then the work will begin on the county board to say, okay, how do we reduce that gap? I think that's our task. We can do that. We run the numbers, but then it comes to you to determine how do we make that work.
So I understand the reason for scenarios, but the issue is not scenarios. We already know from last year and the year before that we have a huge gap we got to cover this year. It's not a secret. Okay? It doesn't matter what the scenarios say. We know that's there. Okay, and to your point, it's incumbent upon us to come up with ways to cut that gap. It's not going back to staff and saying, what program do you want to cut? We have to tell them we want to cut that program. Okay, and they can say that's a required program by state law, you can't cut it. Then we're stuck with that program. Or if it's a program that we started and we don't need to do, then those are the programs we have to look at. But we already know we're in the hole. I mean, it's here, it's there. There's no surprises. Having a scenario that says 0 plus 0.2 just makes that gap bigger. Having a scenario that says half and new growth just makes the gap bigger. We know that. We knew coming into this year we're going to be, even at full CPI and everything, we're going to be $3.5 million short coming into 2027, maybe $4 million short. So, I mean, we can run all the scenarios we want, but unless this board is going to make dramatic cuts, because there's no big dollars out there anymore. It's going to be cutting programs, actual programs to get the money we need. I appreciate the $14,000, but $14,000 is a long, long way from $3.5 million.
And you can't even say that.
Is it okay if I go to Pantry first?
I apologize, I'm gonna say something and then I'm out of here. Going back to the original.
Drop mic, is that what you're just?
Going back to the original request is, it doesn't take you very much time to do a new scenario, right?
Okay.
So my response would be everybody is correct, we're gonna have to make some extraordinarily difficult decisions. However, from a perception, it would be nice to have the additional scenario to be able to go back to our constituents and say, we evaluated all these things, and this is why we chose what we chose, because we had all of these options. So if it doesn't take a whole lot of time, I don't see what the harm would be is to include an additional scenario. Regardless of all the decisions we have to make. Got to start someplace, so you start with what we can, and then we go from there with the discussions as stated by every single one of your members on the committee.
It's not a time or structure of it. My issue is, and I've said this before, anytime we're suggesting that we are cutting whatever, we are a service organization. So that means we're cutting services, which again will impact the county that we're serving. But to me, honestly, the more important side of it is we're impacting people's lives, whether it's the employee that we are no longer going to have, or it's the service that we're no longer offering, or program, or whatever we want to call it.
Understood. I just, again, mine is under this scenario, even though it's a larger amount of money to cut, you can have that information, and maybe it becomes apparent, and all those things that would have to be eliminated, that this is an easier option to do. I get it. I just think that if you have many scenarios to look at, maybe it makes the conversation about what gets cut or what gets considered a little bit easier, a little bit broader.
I might tend to disagree with that concept, but that's all right. I get it. All right, so, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm just a little concerned because when you say that, that budget scenario is just a number. It's not listing out what those options are. That's our job. And so, I want to make sure about that because I don't think that was completely clear last year. Or at least I think there was an expectation that staff was going to come up with more ideas and put them on the table, and it would be kind of like we could choose and pick and choose to see which ones we didn't like. And I think that it's important that if you have an idea, put it on the table.
But that's also, again, I really am going to go, but that's the importance of the committee structure. Every single one of our agencies, our departments come in front of us at committee and make their budget presentation. That's when those conversations should be happening, should they not?
Yes.
What can you eliminate? How many people? I mean, we have to do our work too at that level. So when we meet again as a body, we have some suggestions and recommendations from our individual committees.
But Pam, I mean, nothing personal, but that's just not gonna frickin' happen. I mean, you can't, you're asking our department heads or elected officials to come before us and say, hey, I've been doing the same amount of work with, pick how many people are in my department, 10 people. And now I'm gonna come to you and be like, through more work and more ability, I'm now wanting only 8 people, and I'm willing to let 2 people go.
That's not what I'm saying, Michael, at all. I'm
Okay.
saying they do their budget. Here's my budget. This is what I need, right?
Yeah.
Here it is to you, a committee. And I'm saying the committee, our job as stated, is to then ask and say, I'm responsible for reducing X dollars.
Yep.
Let's go through your budget and where is it that you can work with us and what makes sense. And maybe we'll hear information that, no, we can't cut people, maybe, but that's the conversation.
I agree the conversation needs to happen, but I guess I'm, and maybe incorrectly, but I'm already making the assumption that every single one of our department heads and elected officials have already tried to look at their budget and figured out ways to try and save. I would never go back to one of them and say, we think your budget is overinflated by $4 million, cut $4 million out of it.
Again, I guess my approach is different, because I would say absolutely that they've done the best that they can, and now we get down to the hard nitty-gritty and say, it's not enough, what can we do? And maybe that's the conversation the committee members have after they get the presentation.
Again, it's not that, I'm not saying the conversation shouldn't happen, I'm making.
I get it,
Yeah.
I get it, I was there too with the end result, where we couldn't decide what needed to be reduced and what didn't.
I think somebody pushed
I get
the
it.
wrong button.
Go ahead. Are you really leaving now?
I am really.
Okay.
Oh, before you leave, we have better tool this year than we've had in the past. The name of it again,
Clear up.
ClearGov. And I actually just liked it, it's there. And also too, some ideas, and you can get in there and look at it, and there is no department, you get 300 some people in your department, you can't manage to that level, and everybody goes in, every business owner knows you go in and you look at something from one month to the next, and then you're like, where in the heck did that come from? And you see something that you hadn't seen before that was just sliding by every month, and they add up pretty quickly of things that you didn't see. And so, yeah, and so we all work together and we find things. And so it's a little them, it's a little us, and ideas, and maybe economies of scale. And some of those will be that kind of thing, and then some of them will be the hard things that has this program outlived itself? Is it being utilized? We hate it, we just can't do it right now. So anyway, but thank you. It's all the good ideas of what we have to do here.
Okay, so is it consensus of the committee that we're okay with adding scenario 3, which is 0 CPI and new growth?
I just don't think it's gonna make any difference. I mean, it's just like the look back to everything. I think we need to discard it. And I hope to goodness that nobody comes up, with all due respect to all members here, with let's cut by 3% across the board later on. I just don't want that type of approach to be put on the table, because we're discussing it right now. I think we just need to say these are the practical things. Staff has done a good job in consideration. This is what we need to look at. And I don't want to put staff, even though I know you say it doesn't take very much time, it's impractical. We're not going to go there. So why waste the time to do that? So that's my position.
Anyone else? Okay. So I think it's consensus that to add that one.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
The second part where there was some changes, and this applies more so I think for some of our internal discussions we're going to be having with departments under 2020. So we've been talking a lot in last year's budget and as we started this new fiscal year about personnel, how it's calculated, the holdback for the merit and the vacancy positions, and how really since we've come out of the pandemic, how some of those ideas for budgeting are just no longer realistic. And we're seeing it with some of the departments last year being over what we initially calculated. But in the past, it's always been, personnel lives in finance. And I think that's really important since, I report to this committee, and I think one of your biggest controls as a board is you control the roster. And so when we initially start with the budget, we start with the board-approved positions, the authorized hours for that position and the rate. And we load that into the system and there's calculations. Of course, there's things we add on like overtime or some of the step movements for the union. But really that's the important thing that I think finance needs to maintain control to at least have the base budget. So in the past, it was kind of like, okay, we calculate it, we set some money aside for the general fund departments, and everything turns out fine. You know, we end the year like 97% or so to the budget. But as we've had less positions and less vacant positions, we're seeing that's, you know, it's hard to budget for 1,200 employees. Like we pick a point in time, this is what it is in July, we load it. A lot of changes, and I think the vacancies would kind of offset some of the variances that we would see when we're trying to project that budget. So that's what we're talking about in here. With the vacancy holdback and the merit holdback, I'll be talking about that with you in the non-departmental budget. Making that a more realistic number, I know that's the number we have been reducing over the past couple of years, but then second, really, I don't want to say holding the department heads and elected officials accountable because they are accountable, but I think we haven't given them the tools to say, we own the budget, but you need to understand it because you own actual. And so not all variances are just because the budget is wrong. Usually it's a combination, or the budget is, we projected incorrectly for whatever reason. So really kind of saying, here's your budget, here's how it was calculated, do you agree with this? And then monitoring it, giving them the better tools to monitor it in actual, and making some decisions before we get to October, November, things like that. So really that's just what we talk about in here.
So greater engagement of our department heads in that personnel budget. And also too, understanding what they see on the horizon, because there may be changes that they anticipate we may not be aware of. So I think that's one of the changes we had talked about, was it a month or 2 months ago, and we want to incorporate that into this budget policy. That's kind of a new way of thinking about our personnel budget.
I'm going to go back to kind of a point that I've made before, and I would like to see considered for this policy, and that has to do with reclassifications. And I think that is the planning, the vision that department heads need to have. And I think we need to say that reclassification considerations will be made, you know, at budgeting time, but also maybe one other time during the year, but that's it. It's not going to come sporadically throughout. And I know some people are tired of my argument on that, and I apologize, but I think that we need to do that. I think that helps to kind of manage and oversight. The department heads will be aware then of what the impact is on their particular budgets. So I think that's important.
You're downgrading.
Well, and I think that that's an important, but very fair point. And I know that, and even thinking through last year, there was reclassification fatigue because they were coming ongoing. And that's fair because, you know, the departments are thinking through what they need to do, how they can do things differently. This budget cycle, you'll see there are several reclassifications on there, but aside from a reorganization previously in the year, you didn't see any. And we're intending to honor that request, that intent. April, so we're not quite to the mid-year of the fiscal year, but we're just 1 month shy because May is our 6-month mark. But we can appreciate that. The point, though, is if there is a reorganization that comes up, and as I say, with every transition, good, bad, or indifferent, that's an opportunity to rethink what you do, how you do it, what you need. If there's a reorganization, my ask would be to allow that flexibility because in many cases, as Member Greeno pointed out, that could result in a rethinking of how we do it, the tools that we need, and perhaps maybe a way we can do it more efficiently. But with that, I'd want to celebrate that and capture that outside of that cycle. But if it's a general reclassification of looking at a position and what work are they doing, understandably that's not what you want to see. And with our with Suzanne, and she's here, with her intent is to look at each position every 3 years. That intent will ensure that the position's classified correctly based on the work that it's doing. You know, within a 3-year time period, it's not going to change all that much, but by 3 years, maybe we'll capture enough changes so we can do this a lot more methodically. And I think that's really the intent.
I don't disagree that, you know, as you go through a year, you may have a total reorganization, and that's an exception. I understand that we have to go through reviews, you know, on a routine basis, whether that's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever that is, and that's an exception. The board is always going to be aware of those types of things and could approve those things or disapprove those things. But in terms of regular, routine organizational structure, I think we ought to have a statement, and staff needs to know, directors need to know that county board will look at reclassifications. Always going to be those exceptions, but county board will look at them twice a year. Budget time and 6 months later, or 7 months later, or 8 months later. That's it. So don't try to go to the administration and say we want to put a reclassification out for consideration by the board. I think that that's a proper way to help manage funds as well.
Understood very much, and I appreciate that. We are working on the salary administration policy too, and that would be probably where that would live.
I think you could also go, when we're doing budget discussions with the departments, ask that question of the departments and be like, we don't want you bringing stuff to us in the middle of the year. Do you have anything that you need now?
Yeah.
I mean, you go to them right then and there.
Okay. And I think it's great. I think you're hearing me. I think you hear the board. But my question is, does it belong in a memorialized approach like the budget policy or another policy out there?
I think it belongs in
It needs to be incorporated into a document.
We'd recommend the salary administration policy, which is going through review, and hopefully we'll bring that before you.
That's fine, then I would look forward to that. So I'll stop it in terms of the budget conversation.
Will that be on next month's agenda, do you know?
I'm not going to make that commitment because we've been working on it, but now with ADP coming on, Suzanne and Carrie are identifying other areas where the salary administration policy needs to be more in alignment with what ADP can do, I mean, in a good way. So kind of hit pause on that. But to your point, I think that's really where it would go. Right now we have the intent, you know, that's direction, you know, the understanding that I have, and we're working with our departments on that. But
that's fair.
That policy will come before administrative services, of course.
So the other question I would have, if I may,
Go for it.
is, you know, we talked before about capital fund, Fund 400, we talked about separate equipment fund. Now is the time to look at that. We have fund reserves here. That's one point. Do we need to add something in here for capital? And I know that we're going to say this is totally unknown, but I think we need to ask ourselves, as colleague Collins said, do we put an extra $1 million here? We don't have it. But we need to start thinking in that direction, in my mind. So do we put that in the budget policy here, that we need to establish, you know, a capital fund reserve, if you will, and equipment fund reserve, if you will, or set aside, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, not to use your own words, but you said if the intent of the board is never going to be to do it, why would you do it in the first place?
Well, I think but we've got to change our mindset sometimes. We've got to change that.
Trust me, I would love to do that because I think that's what you should be doing, but I don't see the board. They're going to have a hard enough time trying to figure out how to come up with 4 million, and if we don't take CPI, you know, 7 million in cuts, let alone make it 8 million so we can add another $1 million to capital. I just don't. I mean,
I'm not gonna argue the point because I see what everybody's saying, and I know that it's not gonna go through, so we just accept what we have here. But the point is, as we just discussed before, that's where we should be. That's what we should be doing. And so you've got to start someplace. You just got to,
Well,
it's
some
got to be an
people-
established, routine, policy approach for budgeting. So I won't say anything else
Okay.
because it's gonna take up too much time and nobody wants to do it, so that's fine.
Well, I mean, I would say, look at the $742,000 square foot of building space and see what is actually needed and appropriate, and then do the capital plan on that, and then do the allocation for that. I mean, that takes time. So I wouldn't do an extra million in it. I might maybe set it up, but I wouldn't fund it with, right now I think it's at the 2.43. But again, I would defer to Carrie on that, and if that works right now, I don't know.
Well, the problem is,
But it's just,
keep kicking these cans down the
Right.
road. We sit here and have these conversations. We know we're short. We know, regardless of what space study says, we're gonna have to spend capital dollars every single year. You know that. It may be 2 million, it may be 10 million, whatever, it doesn't matter. Right now, we're relying on going through the budget process and saying, okay, we've done this, now we need $4 million more to do this. Because we have buildings and stuff that have to be done. We go through the capital projects and they lay them out. These are priorities, these are not priorities, these are what, we go through and we pick and choose those. We push some stuff off. So, I mean, we've got this process we want to, but we still have needs right now that are not going to go away.
I think that the language in the policy right now under H fund reserves, it says the county board will strive to maintain 150-day, 5-month unrestricted fund balance. Strive to do that, right? And that's what we do. Why can't we add to this fund reserve paragraph and say the county board will strive to establish and fund a capital fund and an equipment fund? Just something like that, that at least starts the conversation.
Can I just add on to that? One of the things that this budget policy touches upon, but in some cases doesn't go into it, is really the high-level budget goals, right, that you want to set. Each year when you go into a budget, it's like, what are our goals for this year? High level. And I think what you're talking about really is exactly that. It's a goal, and that I think that could be memorialized on there with that language of strive or endeavor to, which says, if we can do it, this is something we want to build in. If you can't do it, you can't do it. But it memorializes it as to say, this is the framework. When we build our budget, we want to try to check these boxes. And if that's a box that we can check, I think it gives everyone clear guidance to say, this is a goal we're striving for. We may or may not achieve it every year, but I actually, as an administrator, I would welcome that in there, because it gives us, then that understanding that this is what we want to make sure we contemplate in the budget we present.
I agree with it. Anybody else agree with it?
Can we fund it with RTA funds?
That's what I was thinking, Gary.
All right, so besides the one change, we're all good?
You want me to add something about the capital fund?
Striving.
And equipment.
Well, they're one. They're one
Strive
fund.
Well,
to
they are, they're not
fund
though.
the identified capital needs for that fiscal year?
What?
Sure, if you want to add some language in there, that's fine.
We'll develop it.
Yeah.
Capital outlay, there's a lot of different terms we'll capture the concept.
And then the only other request that I would have is that you take the revised policy and attach it to the
Yes, I
resolution.
will.
So, okay. All right, with that, can we go
Sorry,
to?
just really quick, because I don't think I need to show it to this committee, but I will be bringing it up at the committee of the whole. This last few pages of this budget policy, we added this, I think, a couple of years ago. I always just like to revisit because I get a lot of questions still based on the general fund, what departments are in the general fund, what are some of the special revenue funds. So this is, I think it's just 5 pages, but it really shows a good, on one page, here's the general fund, here's the departments that fall under the general fund. Because I think there's still some confusion, you know, that
Oh, good.
sheriff might be in its own fund, or how does non-departmental play into that, so.
Very helpful. And you can see that in ClearGov.
Exactly, this isn't our award-winning budget document, but
We can't.
I made it super
Can't
easy
create your report.
to get to from here. But also too, you know,
Good start.
as I said in all my budget presentations, we focus a lot on the general fund, but if you look and really see how many other special revenue funds we have, and then there's like a little blurb about what they do, what their funding source is, because, you know, we are always looking at what can these funds do within the rules to offset things. You know I had to get a plug.
What a great presentation and openness so that the award-winning budget will, you know, be able to be presented.
That's
I love
right.
it. That's Carolyn.
It's gonna be the best.
It does. So just going back, on vacant positions, you have a link here, and it doesn't really work. On page 3, it's a thing on vacant positions, and it talks about sending you back to the resolution. I just thought it would be interesting to go back and look at that, and
Oh, shoot.
it doesn't
Sorry.
open up. That's okay,
I'll
I
fix
just,
that.
all right.
Page
It's on page
number
3.
It's not on the.
Correct, page 3 of the policy. Under I, vacant
Okay.
positions. Okay, thanks.
All right, with that, can we go to vote then? Yes? Okay, Eric?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Brian? Yes. John?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion carries. We're on to item 7.6. I'll entertain a motion.
Well, can we,
Oh, go ahead. What?
6 and 7 together?
Sure, we can do 6 and 7 together. So I'll entertain a motions for items 7.6 and 7.7.
They're all warmed up for you. Thank you.
Anyone?
That's the hot
Sure.
John? Carolyn?
A second, sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, man.
Okay, Terry, you pulled these two?
Yes, I just wanted the opportunity to highlight my passion, so, gentlemen, I really wanted you to have the opportunity to explain a little bit more about the funding, the programming, how it works, and that it's hard to understand sometimes about how the money comes in and then it's still sitting there and then it has to be transferred, and what's the size of is the size of the entire grant annually, is it 5 million, or is it, I know it comes in different ways.
Okay, I'm Jeffrey Pointer. I'm the
Oh, sorry.
Program Director for the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Grant for McHenry County.
I'm Dr. Jake Rohn. I'm the Director of the Workforce Board.
Funding for the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, we'll just refer to it as the Act, is a grant from the U.S. Department of Labor to the state of Illinois. And it's based on a number of factors, including workforce participation, population, employment opportunities in the state, unemployment levels, and a whole host of other things, including economic drivers. So each state receives a portion of the ACT grant, and then that same kind of formula is applied to the 22 local workforce areas across the state of Illinois. We receive, and we've been pretty flat, between 1.8 and 1.95 million over the past 3 or 4 years. So there's really been no accountability for cost of living increases in there, cost of tuition increases, cost of labor in that. So we have been blessed with the opportunity to go to the state, as in our one E-Rapid Response grant, to secure additional funds to serve, in this case, dislocated workers, those that have recently lost employment. This discussion with DCEO was precipitated by the recent loss of employment by about almost 400 employees of First Brands at Brake Parts in McHenry, and the demand overall by the dislocated workers. So We serve a population anywhere from ages 16 to when they decide to leave the workforce. There is no age stipulation there. And we receive money specific for the young adult program up to age 24, or the adult populations anywhere from 18 to their determination. Our grant, we live within our grant. We pay our occupancy expenses in the building, our salaries, and our grant is used to scholarship individuals to become more employable or help them with their job search where appropriate. So someone might want to become a truck driver, might want to become an accountant, might want to become an HR generalist. We're able to, within approved programming, write them a scholarship voucher to McHenry County College, to First Institute, or any number of training providers throughout the state or online. We manage that. We're accountable to the U.S. Department of Labor. We're accountable to the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. We're accountable to this board. So we're under the eyes. So, I mean, our payments and such are reviewed by DCEO. They're reviewed by the state's, the county's auditor, Shannon's office, and such. So, and we have spending requirements where we must spend a percentage of our money to meet the needs of the training for these individuals. Now, we do scholarship them for classroom seats or online seats, but we also scholarship them to go to work, to get real work experience. Someone's never done a job, they need to explore that, or sometimes it's a lead-in to a job offer, so we can get them in the door. A lot of times it complements their classroom. So someone's going to school to be a CNC operator, we try to get them into a manufacturing opportunity. So, or they have experience in there, so we look at their transferable skills and where they might fit and help them in the door there. So this grant that's before you is in addition to our $1.9 million to help scholarship individuals to training so that they have employable skills and experience.
And I misspoke. I was thinking rolling 3 years when I think about the grant.
Our grant really is for 2 years, but we must spend over 80% or more of it in the first year of it. Our program year begins July 1st. The federal budget begins October 1st, and the county budget begins December 1st. So we work with Carrie to keep all those rolling dates straight. And the reason that we spend 80% and are allowable up to 20% carryover is because our new grant isn't always available, and monies are held back for the first quarter because we don't really get the grant until December 1st. So that carryover, and that's how these work with us also. So we do include funding in here to help pay staff costs to manage working with the individuals and the accountability of the grant.
Thank you.
Am I missing anything, Terry?
So well run. I serve in Kane County, and you are their goal. So
thank you.
Yes.
We have an extremely interactive and engaged board, the workforce board that Jake's the director of. So in that board, and I don't mean to step on, it's just I did it for what, 10 years. So has headcount requirements in certain areas. So we must have at least 50% plus one as representatives from the business community that have hiring and firing authority. And so, because they know what training is necessary in the area. We must have 20% that represents organized labor, so the trades. We must have economic development on there. We have to have the Illinois Department of Employment Security. We have to have adult ed, career and technical education, the social service programs, SNAP, TANF, and book rehab, and any others. There are others in there. So the board sits at what?
24 individuals right now with, I believe, about 14 that are in business organizations. I mean, with that too, one of the big things the board does is compliance and oversight to the program side, make sure we set policies. Also, we approve contracts for services. So one of the contracts up for today is to run our front lobby area. That is a requirement under our act that we have to procure that. And then we have a consortium model between 3 of our partners. Jeff is one of the partners, McHenry County College is another partner, and also IDES, Illinois Department of Employment Security is the final partner. And they make up that entity that manages our front area, which we luckily have that. They decided to do that before we've had a contract, and they decided to reapply. With that contract, we only received 1 response and really tried to market that out as best as possible. Unfortunately, only 1. But we did go through an elaborate evaluation process, and Terry was luckily part of that process to make sure we're vetting everything, even if we are only getting 1 response. The same thing we're doing with all of our contracts as well.
And it was excellent, with only from like a B+ in marketing and technology, which is easily addressed, and it was excellent, just excellent. Yeah.
Anything else, Terry?
No,
Okay.
I highly endorse both of these.
Does other board members have questions? I just have one quick question. So does a person have to be unemployed to be able to get no? So they can be employed, but they're looking to better themselves to...
We look at a number of factors. So are they in a dead-end job, low income and such? So we can help that with that. We have services that we have to make them eligible for. We have services they don't have to be eligible for. So they want to do a lot of job search and learn about different occupations. We can help them with that, called universal services. If they're looking to upskill their current skills, that's where they have to be eligible to get scholarships and such. If you, as an employer, have somebody that you have identified that has more potential and they need schooling for that, we might be able to assist with reimbursement for training for them as an incumbent worker.
Got it.
And we do a lot of that.
Okay.
So at one point, all of the areas where they're providing training is they're high growth, high pay, or viable.
Yeah.
So we get a list that we have to go off of occupations that are considered high growth in the state. So the state manages that list. We have a local priority list that we look at locally, that we do as a board to say these are locally what we really need. But anyone can look at the state list and if there's other things. And it's all dependent on the individual. So if the individual has maybe an occupation that we're not seeing as great here, we're going to plan with them to say, okay, where is that going to be in high growth? And then you're going to have to travel there, and so on and so forth. So very much we're looking at every aspect of the economy and making sure we're helping smooth that out. I mean, First Francis is a great example of that. We did a whole initiative in job fair that we partnered with the city of McHenry and McHenry County College and economic development to get that going, and making sure we get those opportunities to the individuals being laid off so that transition is smooth. We've seen that also last year. We had the nursing home that over here, Hearthstone, that ended up closing in that transition. So we're coming in and doing rapid response and really addressing those needs as we can. So with that, Jeff and I are always looking at, and we get a list of saying, okay, what companies could be struggling or seeing layoffs there. We're working with Mark Picos and economic development to understand, hey, what's going on? Where can we help, and where is the need the greatest?
And First Friends is brake parts. So.
Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll go to vote on items 7.6 and 7.7. Terry, you're first.
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
John? Yes. Eric?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're on to item 7.8. I'll entertain a motion. Terry and Brian. Terry, you pulled this one?
Yes, I was just wondering, what was the delay that the cost went up by 5%?
Good morning.
Sorry.
Oh, no, this is always going to be an issue. So this was submitted as a supplemental request.
You have to introduce yourself.
Oh, Sandra Salgado, Business Manager for the Sheriff's Office. This was a supplemental request for this year's budget. So when I got the original quote to be submitted with the budget, it was last May, and most quotes are only good for 30 to maybe 90 days. So when we re-quoted, it was higher, and we actually talked them down about $8,000.
But was there a reason that you couldn't buy it, like May, June, July?
Of last year?
Yeah.
Well, we submitted it in the budget for this year. We didn't have the funds last year, so it was approved, right, for this year.
So then you couldn't spend it until after
Right.
November?
So that's gonna be the case with every large item that we kind of bring forward.
Can you ask them to pro-date it?
They're not gonna guarantee the prices for a year. There are some companies that, we always try. There's some that, will work with us, but a lot of these type of digital or other products that they can't guarantee what it's gonna cost them for.
Okay. Just begging you, just ask them to either post-date it or to sell you last year's model. That's all. Because our CPI is
won't-
not 5%, that's all.
No, I understood. I don't think that they'll date it out into the future, but we can ask them to
Okay, just
work with them to guarantee the price.
Okay.
In Ms. Greeno, we did do that actually with Motorola with our radios, which weren't as much of a surprise as it seems as presented, but we did
You shocked us all.
Yes, you did.
I'm a shocker sometimes.
Okay. Okay, well, I had to ask.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, are there any other questions? Okay, if not, we'll go to vote on item 7.8. Carolyn?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
John? Yes. Eric?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion carries. We're on to item 7.21. I'll entertain a motion.
Oh.
Terry?
Yes.
Was that you, Carolyn? Yeah, Carolyn seconds. Terry, you pulled this one?
Yes, I did, and I know this is only $800, guys, please forgive me. I was looking at the title of this position, and it's for Fiscal Operations Manager. So just because we have this great ClearGov app, I could go in and look at the departments, and they had an overrun of just under 300,000 in '24 and just under 200,000 in '25, and I'm like, wow, this is the manager of that. I mean, I know they're combining it now with those two, but is the position going to be able to get the department within budget? Or is there a reason that it keeps going over budget? And I know that that might be really a lot to ask, so.
Sure. I'm Jill Damer. I'm the Deputy Court Administrator.
Okay.
Stepping in for Dan Wallace today.
Okay.
So this position is our Fiscal Operations Manager, and Courtney's sitting in back there. She assists with the budget, but I think that's more Dan Wallace is, he.
Okay.
Yeah, so she assists, goes through, and makes recommendations, but in the end it is Dan. So you're just asking if her position.
Well, yeah,
Well-
I mean, yeah, like that actual, what this ties back to has actually been over budget the last 2 years. I mean, it got better by 100,000, but it does say Fiscal Operations Manager.
If I remember correctly, wasn't one of those years the youth detention issue? Or I don't know if issue is the right word, but there was
I think it's specialty courts, I'm not sure.
Well,
That's why I'm
and I know,
asking. That's why
I
I'm
know we
asking.
were under budget this coming year. We reduced our budget with
Over
office,
2026?
the with Office of Statewide Pretrial Services being moved, so.
Okay, so it
that-
has been addressed. Okay, so we're getting more than.
We have been able to.
Okay, so it's gonna be offset. Okay, well, I had to ask, because we've got this, you guys, we've got this great tool so we can go in. And the reason is, we get the resolutions and it's such a small amount, but we're looking for big amounts and small amounts add up, so I had to ask.
Totally
So-
understand.
So thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Are there any other questions by members?
No.
Okay, we'll go to vote on item 7.21. Brian, you're up.
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, motion carries. Okay, that's it with agenda items. We have reports. Let's have our award-winning CFO come down for,
I will be quick.
did we good?
Well, quick.
At least quick. Okay.
Both. So we've had a lot going on right now. Our accounting manager is in the process, the field work is done for the audit, and she's in the process of doing the first draft of the financial report, which we've been working really hard over the past couple of years to bring the entire function into our office versus having Baker Tilly assist. So it's really a lot of work and she's doing great. But the first draft is due tomorrow and it's just about finished.
Yay.
I know.
So that won't be a finding then?
That is the goal, correct. I mean, we'll see when they go through their first review, if there's anything significant they have to change. That's kind of the last hurdle we have to get through, but I don't foresee any issues. I know.
I will be the first to admit, after the last board meeting, I went down and tried to strong arm John Rader a little bit about, these findings that he keeps on dumping on there. And he, informed me, well, there's regulations and, we have to follow regulations. And I said, yeah, but John, your interpretation of those regulations is what I need you to look at. So
Well,
see how that works.
the thing that happened last year is, so there is criteria for how we determine major funds, and it's really just how big is one fund in comparison to all the other funds. And so last year was the first time we had a fund move from just the regular special revenue fund to a major fund, so we missed it. So that was really what was driving the finding last year. But that was my argument, is like we just had one thing and we have the same finding as when we prepare their whole document, but whatever. So
Interpretation, see, again,
Yes,
it's
yes.
how you interpret, the regulations.
Yes, so that is going well. We've been working a lot with ADP, Suzanne and I, and our teams. We had them, ADP, out here on site for a week in March to really do the pre-design, and we specifically wanted them on site, and I think it was a really great week. And I'm very excited about the ADP team that we have. They're very experienced, and they've been challenging us on some things that I think will help with the setup, hopefully make the employee experience better, but it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of rethinking some process, which I know is where we get the value, but it's a lot.
So I appreciate the work that they're doing. How has the discussion come up about why we got rid of them, whatever, 4 years or 4.5 years ago, and the problems we were having at that point in time, which is what prompted us to make a change? I mean, because, again, there was part of it was our issues.
Yeah.
And part of it was their issues.
I think a lot of that was addressed in the demo, because we had multiple demos from different companies. And so we talked very specifically, and that's, I think, some of the benefit of us having gone through this, our current system, is instead of just sitting there in the demo, it was more like, well, here's my current problem, show me how it's different. And we really went through a lot of that stuff in the demo, so it was addressed at that point. And so far, with the implementation, you know, because it's the sales and the demo, and then when you get to the actual implementation, and they're like, it can't do that. We haven't come across that.
Well, and you know, this is a bad analogy, but like, you know, it's like getting remarried all over again to the same person, you know, like the problems will eventually recreate themselves unless you went through counseling to figure out what caused the first problem, right? So
Right.
I just want to make sure that we're eyes wide open to what we're getting into. I agree that we had to make a change, and I'm okay with going back to ADP. I just want to make sure we're not repeating the same things.
I think the decision to not go with ADP 5 years ago, I think more so had to do with price, not necessarily because the ADP that we left, you know, was the 1980s modem.
Had a dial-up modem.
Yeah, so I mean, no matter what we went to, it was going to be significantly different. Yeah, I don't know that I 100% agree that ADP was awful and that's why we left them.
Well, awful is probably not the right word, but we had issues with it. So I mean, that was just, okay. That was all my concern.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I mean. Okay. So, you know, we talked a lot about this in the budget process and in the cash flow, specifically in April and May. So just so you know, we get the first property tax distribution in June. And so last year, the general fund bank account, it's called Magnum, and so the treasurer maintains that. Last year, in May, is when we saw Magnum start to run out of money for the operations. So really, that just means we had to move money from investments into Magnum for the day-to-day activities. So based on the projections and where we ended with the budget, we assumed that in April, we would start running into that issue. And again, I want to note it's not necessarily a crisis, but you know, a couple years ago we had over $30 million invested in the general fund. Right now it's about 24. We have to leave about $3 million of that liquid cash so we can address these cash flow issues. Again, I think that's a normal part of any type of operation. But what I've been seeing all along is there's, you know, next year maybe we'll be at 18 million and we'll run out of money in March. And so we're just kind of starting this process, you know, and then IMRF can't meet its payroll obligation, so it's borrowing money from the general fund. And as we talk back to capital, the capital fund relies on the general fund, so we can't transfer money from the general fund until we get the June money. So then the capital fund can't make its obligations. So that's just kind of what we're managing right now, just keeping that in mind as we go through, as we start our budget discussions for 27.
Yeah, and I asked Karen to bring this, just so you're aware, as Finance and Audit Committee, that you're aware of these movements that we have to make in order to get to June when the property taxes come in, so out of full transparency.
Right, and you know, only, well, not only, but about 40% of our budget for the general fund is property taxes. So we have other money, specifically sales tax, coming in, you know, between now and June. But just for some reference, last week, the Magnum account started at about 3.1 million. And then this week, we're about, is up to 6.2. But just for some reference, you know, payroll came out yesterday and that's about 2.8.
And I should probably know this, but when are we sending out property tax bills?
Oh, Donna told me I can't
Pay your bills or
May 14th or something. I
Is
don't.
when they're being sent out?
I don't know. I thought that's what she said, but I.
June 1st, I think.
We usually get the treasurer, they don't wait until they get the full amount to start their distribution.
No, right, I know.
So we start seeing some property tax come in the end of May.
For some reason, I thought the bills went out in April.
I'm almost positive she said May,
Okay,
but I can.
it's fine,
I don't know.
it's not a big deal.
So really.
Just trying to anticipate when we're gonna get all the phone calls and emails, you know?
Oh, and then, you know, Donna, the treasurer Kurtz has been a great partner in, you know, working through these issues. But again, it's like we have to find the best balance of having enough operating cash, maximizing our investments, you know, because we do rely on investment income as one of our line items to help offset the property tax.
So, a couple questions. One, money being transferred to IMRF, that's a loan
Correct, yes.
on the books. Didn't we, last November or December, January, I'm gonna use the word write off, I know it's not right, write off the loans that we'd given those before?
We did not write those off.
So there's, huh?
There was some discussion, and actually, this is my mistake. I was supposed to bring something back for discussion on if we want to write off those loans. Because FICA right now is just barely scraping by. I think there's about.
No, we did something though.
No, I had brought it up. I brought it up about creating a resolution that not only forgave the loan back to the general fund, but then we would take some from reserves to finish making those two funds back to where they should be, so that we're not doing interfund loans as a temporary basis, and we can then set the levies for those at an appropriate amount going forward because they're already established with the correct dollar amount they should have.
Okay.
So that was what I had asked Carrie to do.
I'm sorry.
Let's
Next month, but honestly, I guess it's, well, I think for FICA, we would probably need like $30 million to forgive the loan and then boost up its reserve. You know, and then we start talking about what that does to the general fund reserve.
Well,
And that will definitely put us below the 5 months.
well, but I'd rather have that discussion so that we're all aware of what's going on versus, you know, worst comes to worst, we don't fully do something, but we at least start having the discussion. I don't know how to have more discussions to make people more aware of what's going on. I don't know how to.
I will bring that, yes, and I apologize. I was waiting for the final report, or the final fiscal 25, and I have it now. I had it last month, but I forgot.
It's okay. It's all good.
Thank you.
We're not going anywhere, so.
Yeah.
All right, anything else for Carrie? Okay, no contingency. EDC, I think probably the most exciting thing going on with the EDC, so Mark Picos and I are heading to Germany next week and the following week for an economic development along with GSEP. The trip originally, so as you know, Chairman Bueller went to Japan last year, sorry, for an economic development trip. And this year, heading to Germany. And Chairman Bueller was supposed to go, but he couldn't go, so he asked me to go in his stead. It's tied in with the, I believe it's the world's largest manufacturing show in Hanover. It's a week-long show, and so we're going to visit companies, and then we're eventually going to end up at the show. We're actually presenting at the show about, you know, how to come to greater Chicagoland area for bringing businesses here that are interested in doing that. You know, there is a, part of it is also a goodwill trip. There's still, and I'm being told this, so I haven't experienced this for myself, but I guess there's still a stigma of that Americans don't like Germans because of World War II. And even though that happened 70 years ago, it's still out there. And so there's a perception by German manufacturing that America is not welcoming to having them bring facilities here. And so part of that is breaking down that barrier and saying, no, we'd love to have you here, you know, employing people here and working here. So there's that part of it also. I think from a selfish standpoint, you know, what used to be a trip of 30 people has gotten much smaller from a lot of people not being able to go. And so I'm really happy that the county has 3 people going. There's another gentleman, Alex, who runs a manufacturing facility in Cary. He's going also. So there's actually 3 people from McHenry County that are going on this trip. There is no other entity that has 3 people going from it. So what used to be a GSEP and still is a GSEP run organization will be dominated by McHenry County, which I think is fabulous. We can, when we break into our small groups, we can have someone from McHenry County in each small group and chime about how we're such a great place to be at. So I'm excited about it. It'll be the lady who is from the German consulate who's helping put everything together. She commented that you won't get a lot of sleep. You can sleep on the bus when we're traveling from place to place, but she said you'll be on the run the whole time. So I went out and I bought some new clothes so that I could represent the county halfway decently. You know, my wife informed me that, she's like, you're seriously gonna wear that? I'm like, yeah, what's the problem? She goes, it's 10 years old. I'm like, so? She's like, yeah, you need to look better, so.
Thank you.
I did go buy some new clothes, you know, stopped at Macy's and dropped some money on clothes and so
We appreciate
I'll look sharp as I represent the county. So that's what's going on. That's probably the most exciting thing that's going on. We're setting up strategic planning meetings. So we've created an outline as to what it looks like based on current and where we believe we're going, and then we're going to talk with the full board about what it looks like, you know, going over now. And probably the last thing that I think is going to be very helpful is we've developed I'll back up for 2 seconds. When we've asked companies to be an investor in MCEDC, the value proposition was sketchy at best. You know, besides the goodwill side of it is, hey, you should invest because we're part of the county, there wasn't really anything to give them as far as a piece of paper that says these are the benefits that you receive for being different investor levels. And that was one of the things that I have been harping on for several years now, that we need to put a value proposition forward for companies to be a member and / an investor. So we have finally done that. We have different tiers that are broken out, and it's different for municipalities and other public partners versus private. And so with this year's cycle of going out and asking for investors, meaning 2026 cycle, we're using that so that the investors can look at something and say, hey, these are tangible things that I can get out of MCEDC. And hopefully we will be able to increase the number of private investors and public investors based on, you know, the criteria by which they're looking at and saying this is of value for our business or our public entity. So those are the things that are going on. Any questions? Natural McHenry County.
You know, I think I reported at a previous Finance Audit Committee meeting that I would no longer be given this report, but Alicia is actually representing the county at a CMAP County Board Chairs meeting. Chairman Bueller wasn't able to attend. Adam and I are wrapped up in here, so Alicia drew actually the long straw because it's a really good meeting. Before I get on to National McHenry County, and actually there's really nothing to report except she's not there. But I want to touch on,
So that was it.
but I want to go back to MCEDC because maybe not quite as exciting as what Chairman Scala pointed out, but Mark Picos and the R1 Planning Council were successful in getting a DCEO site readiness grant of about $4.6 million for the city of Marengo to extend the water and sewer from Anthony Road south to 2390. That's the final leg. Very exciting. So I want to commend Mark for his hard work and an R1 Planning Council because of that partnership of being able to bring those dollars home for that project. On top of that, and I'm going to put Adam and Alicia on the compliment list because we had some fire drills of getting community project funds pulled together. These are the congressional earmarks, if you will. And so our congressman reached out to us and said, give us your projects. We worked with the city of Marengo and Derek Moorfield to put together a community project fund to submit to Congressman Foster for the other funding that's needed for 2390, the water and sewer from Anthony Road to 2390. And we received word that a $1.4 million earmark is moving forward. That's good. I mean, there's a lot of steps to go through, but very encouraging because this will get most of the funding from Anthony Road to 2390, which opens up that whole entire area for economic development for the city of Marengo and for McHenry County. So very exciting. So I'm going to make sure that this committee is charged with the economic development of the county. I think that's incredibly important for you to know. So, but I want to commend all the efforts and all the hard work of many people to bring that funding home. And just one final note, actually, to MCEDC and Natural McHenry County, just so you have it on your radar. Their agreements, their respective agreements, will both expire at the end of this year. So I'm going to target probably July, August, that those agreements will come back before this committee for review, including the funding allocation that the county deems appropriate. In the past, we had the Economic Development Fund, Fund 302, which covered that, so it wasn't general fund dollars. At the end of this year, likely that fund's going to be depleted, so that's something that if you feel that these are important endeavors for the county, important to the economic development for the county, you'll have to consider what that funding allocation will be. But those will be coming forward for renewal, like I said, July, August. Hopefully we'll have whatever that figure would be so Kerry can build it into the budget and go from there. So that's all I have.
So just to piggyback on what Scott said, I wasn't going to mention it, but you did. So the part of the agreement with getting the grant is that there's a match. And so that's kind of what you were talking about with Congressman Foster's appropriation, is that would cover all of that match portion, where right now the county has signed a letter of intent that we would cover that. So if for some reason Congressman Foster's appropriation doesn't make it through whatever budget process that goes through, then the county is going to have to talk about how we're going to fund its $1.7 million to do the match part for the grant.
And I appreciate it. Even if it does go through, whatever the construction costs ultimately turn out to be, there still may be that participation of the county in some way, shape, or form. So. And
that will, similar to what Kerry's doing now on the other match part of it, you know, the city of Marengo submits paperwork to Kerry, and then Kerry will release funds for the match part that we're currently matching for. This will be in 2027, so it won't be happening immediately, but again, the board will have to sign an agreement with Marengo, what that looks like and how you negotiate that. I won't be here to have to worry about, but you know, that'll be another $1.7 million that will have to go somewhere into your budget and process thinking.
1.7 or a portion thereof.
Or a portion thereof, if we can get through Congressman Foster, that would be great.
I'm an optimist.
Yes. Well, you know how our federal government is, it's a well-oiled machine, so. All right, anything else? Okay, with that, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:50. John and Terry, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.